Well, hello everyone to another episode of Spinal Network's podcast series. And today we have a special guest. We have Erin with Sunrise Therapies. And before I let Erin introduce herself, I'm going to introduce myself and give a little visual to any of our folks that are visually impaired, so they have an idea of what's going on the screen. So I'm Rick. I'm the executive director of Spinal Network. I'm a T8 para, manual wheelchair user, 45 years post. You know, I have to be honest, so I'm going to give it all. I'm a mid-60s white male, for all intents and purposes, bald, wearing glasses and a gray collared shirt. My background is a white background, and in blue letters says Spinal Network, Independence, Resources, and Community. And between the L in spinal and the N in network is, I call this an orange squiggly. And all I can think of is the person who designed this, that was supposed to be a spinal cord. And which is cool, but there's definitely an interesting scoliosis going on with that. So anyway, that is me. And Erin?
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much, Rick. My name is Erin Clarelli. I am the CEO of Sunrise Therapies, Inc., and I am an occupational therapist. I am a white female. I am 31 years old, or 31 years young, I like to say. I have brown hair, and I'm in a zip-up hoodie to keep me warm and cozy here in cold San Diego, I know. And then my background is my office / my Zen space. So I have a cozy bed behind me covered in pink because that's my calming color. I have some flowers, some fake flowers because I can't keep any real ones alive. Some geometric pictures. I have a letter board and a salt lamp behind me. So I think that's it for my intro.
I think so. So let's just keep it going. So Erin, the question I always like to lead with is tell us about your journey, the journey that led up to the beginnings of Sunrise Therapies.
Yeah, of course. So I've always been someone that held really strong morals and belief in helping others. And as I went through my schooling, I always heard, like, when you go through the application process to become an OT, there's interviews, and the question is always, why do you want to be an OT? And everyone says, because I want to help others. And now that I'm on the other side, I'm like, well, you know, that's, I think, in nursing and other, you know, medical fields as well. But I think it has such a deeper meaning now. It's not so much about helping others, it's being connected with others in vulnerable times, in exciting times, in challenging times, you know, all the ups and downs of life. And now that I'm older and I understand and have time to reflect on my upbringing, I think that's what it always was. It was about the connection to other people, and experiencing life with other people. So that's kind of what led me to become an occupational therapist. And then I worked in a variety of settings. I started in an outpatient clinic where I saw a variety of different clients, ranging from cerebral palsy or like genetic disorders, or any like autism, sensory processing, dyslexia, dysgraphia. So a wide range, things that may only challenge the body. You know, sometimes OTs can work with someone that has hurt their wrist, has fallen down and broken their wrist. And that could be really hand therapy based, or you could work with someone that is mainly brain and spinal cord based. And how does that affect, you know, how the brain thinks and operates and makes connections, and how does the body move? So yeah, in the beginning, it was very broad. I didn't really know where I wanted to go. I knew I wanted to be within pediatrics, because I loved kids. And then as I moved along, I worked in a school district, and then I worked in another clinic, and then I took some training in yoga and mindfulness and how that impacts those with varying ability levels or that are neurodivergent, and how that could support, honestly, any brain. So that kind of brought me to creating my first business, which I actually didn't mention before. I named it Yotiga, so yoga with OT in the middle. And I did that for a little bit, and it was really fun, but I didn't have the business mindset. I didn't want to have a business mindset. I didn't have the energy to like learn about what that means and how to set up legal things and how to have things organized as a business. So after I did that, I got a job in an outpatient clinic, which was mainly, it was led by a neurologist. So really heavy, like neurology focused, sensory processing focused. And that really just like exploded for me. The fascination of the brain and how our brain and body connect, and how we move our bodies throughout space, and how we feel our environment through our bodies, and how we interact in that way. So now up to here, back in May, I decided to kind of branch off out on my own again, because I think that's just in me, of like that creator and finding things that maybe aren't readily accessible to the communities I serve. And that's kind of how I landed in this community-based business that I've created. And again, the more I look back at like all the paths and all the things I've learned, it makes so much sense why I'm here. So I think that's a great question to start with.
And I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head with community-based, because as you were talking about that, I mean, you know, even though I worked in the industry, the healthcare industry, primarily the wheelchair side of the industry for 32 years, when I jumped out to start the nonprofit, and I thought all my years of experience would have prepared me better for that, but it didn't. And a nonprofit is an entirely different world, and but that's what we had to evolve. We had to figure out who we were, what we wanted to do, who we wanted to serve. And as we took time to do that, and finally came to the realization of, oh, this is who we are, and that it's all about community. I mean, that's the centerpiece, you know. And I have to tell you just a real quick story as I talk about finding out who we are. Originally, there was somebody who was on our executive committee. Her husband, who was retired, he offered to sit down with me and kind of see if he could help us along. And I remember meeting with Morris the first time, and he goes, well, what is the name of your chapter, your organization? And at that particular time, it was the Southern California chapter of the National Spinal Cord Injury Association. And I told him that, and he just kind of looked and blinked and then had this little smile on his face. And he goes, this will stay with me as long as I live. He said, doesn't fit on a pen, does it? And I thought, oh, he's joking, you know, he made a joke. And then I looked at him and realized, oh, he's not making a joke. Yeah. And I thought about it and I went, you know, he's absolutely correct. Mm-hmm. And even when it changed to be the Southern California chapter of United Spinal Association, which still didn't fit on a pen, and I realized that what he was really getting at was that he goes, we don't have an identity. Yeah. We have no identity. Mm-hmm. You know, when people say, who are the Southern California chapter of what? United Spinal Association. Well, then they go, oh, that's the United Spinal chapter. Mm-hmm. So I thought, oh, this is not, I don't want this. This is not what we need. Yeah. And we took 6 months to come up with a name. And we came up with Spinal Network, which was the name of a publication 30 something years ago that Sam Maddox had put out. So Sam's a friend. I called Sam and said, Sam, can I use Spinal Network? And he goes, well, probably, but I don't own it anymore. And I said, oh, he goes, I sold it 30 years ago. Well, who did you sell it to? Well, it doesn't make any difference because they sold it. And then go, Sam, bottom line here, bottom line.
Yeah.
Because Gene Dobbs owns it. Well, I know Gene Dobbs is a friend of mine who is she heads up New Mobility Magazine. So I called Jeannie Dobbs and I said, Gene, can I use Spinal Network? And she goes, I bought it 12 years ago and I was going to do something and I haven't. So it probably means that I'm not going to do anything with it. So yes. She goes, however, I own the domain spinalnetwork.org. And I said, I'll put a dash in there.
Yeah.
So she goes, okay. So, I said, can you just email me that? I know we're friends, but so she did. So I had a hard copy and yeah, check the domain, www.spinal-network.org. Boom, there it is.
Love it.
The rest is history. It just spoke of who we are and what we do. It was perfect. So anyway, I was just going to jump in for a second and tell a little story and look what happened. So anyway, so let's get on to the next question. So that led up to you starting Sunrise Therapies.
Correct.
So now if you could take it from there and tell us about Sunrise Therapies, kind of the model you're using, the folks that you work with, and maybe, what are your plans for 2022?
The big question. Yeah, of course. So Sunrise Therapies, my main focus is bringing what I have to offer as an occupational therapist, as a human, as a mindful practitioner and a yoga practitioner, all these things that I brought together to the families that I serve or the clients that I serve in whatever environment feels the best for them, as well as the environments that they want to feel really great. So that may be starting in a client's home and working on skills and really scaffolding and building up the skills and talking about what they want to achieve. And that varies. Sometimes it's, I want to learn how to stand up paddleboard on the San Diego Bay. And I want to be able to navigate safely and independently with supports, whatever supports I need. Or it might be, I want to be able to go to Target and buy a new video game or clothes or whatever it is. I have I want to learn how to mountain bike, or I want to be able to hike Cowles Mountain. I want to enjoy all that the beautiful San Diego has to offer, but at times my body may not let me, or the accessibility component of moving my body through that. How do we adapt it? How do we advocate for the adaptations that may be needed to be done by, the city or the county? So it's more than just, traditional OT where, I'm seeing you for an hour and that's like, we're working on these really, I call them like rigid or stringent, like clinic-based goals. It's very client-based. It's very practical. It's happening in the environments where the clients feel the most regulated and organized. So that we could kind of push those boundaries and then move to those environments that maybe don't feel as organizing and calming, but it's like, hey, we did that at home. We did exactly what we're doing, just in this new context. And I guess I could have started with this, but I work with the neurodiverse or neurodivergent population. So like I said earlier, ADHD, dyspraxia, mainly autistic, teens to adults, some young kids. And this is bringing up thoughts from earlier that it's funny because when I started this whole journey, I was like, give me all the little kids. I want to be building with block, and doing crafts. And now I love working with adults and like that transition phase from high school to, the real world. It's a really scary time for anyone. What do we want to do with the rest of our life? We've been in this like quote unquote system that has been really set up and supportive, hopefully for us. But now what's next, So a big chunk of who I work with is autistic adults. And then where was I going with that? Oh, there's another branch of it that I work closely with another practitioner in our area. She's up in Oceanside. And we've created this outing opportunity for families. So we call it our Ohana outing. So like a big family. And it's all about setting up outings where it's expected that someone with autism might be shouting at one moment, or they may be running across the room really fast. And that, that's okay. My body does that sometimes too, or it's just everything is expected, and the demands of quote unquote social norms are not there. Like everyone just shows up who you are, how you are, and we're going to make it accessible to you. So we've done things, and these are all free to the community. It's all about, again, about building that community and building that connection, and that network. So we've done things like beach days where we just bring a bunch of like beach games or boogie boards and surfboards, and we're hanging out at the beach. This weekend, we're going to the Van Gogh Expo up in Del Mar, which will be a really great sensory experience for all involved. We've done silent discos. We have a field day coming up, and we're always open to suggestions and ideas from the community, we're working with. But I think that's, if I had to give a little bit longer than an elevator speech pitch, that would be, what I'm doing. But I'm always like, my biggest thing in my company and in life is that I'm always open to learning and trying something new and being courageous in that moment of like, I don't know, I've never done that, but I'm down to try to figure this out with you, and let's do it. Let's take that leap and try whatever it is that is like your big dream or the big goal that you may have been told all these years that no, that's not accessible to you, or it's not safe to do that, whatever it might be, the things that come up. So
that's great. That is great. It's you can't do that, that's kind of not in my vocabulary. You know what? Could you hang on just 1 second? One second. I realize that I'm looking pretty dark, and the reason being is that
the lights are off.
I had no lights on, and as it's getting, I've got blinds pulled a little so I don't get any glare. So as as it's getting just a little darker outside, I realized, wow, I'm looking pretty dark there.
You're disappearing.
It's bad enough when with the virtual background on Zoom, and someone said, well, if you use a green screen, you don't get that weird stuff going on with your head. Which I'm glad that the majority of platforms that this podcast goes onto are just audio, so they're not seeing all the weird things that these weird, I almost look like I'm, of course, no one's going to remember this, from an episode of The Outer Limits, which is when I was a kid.
I don't know.
Anyway, I know, but it's what there's such a need, and the reason I know this is because we get this question often is, there's only so much in the way of resources and people to run programs for us that we have to determine, who is our target population. And, we certainly didn't want to stop. We provide resources and programs for those with spinal cord injuries, period. No, that would just does not sit well with me at all. So we said, okay, spinal cord injuries and spinal diagnoses, but that still leaves it kind of open to a group that would be larger than we could provide service to. So it's spinal cord injuries and spinal diagnoses where the individual is using a manual or power wheelchair for their mobility. And their family and friends and caregivers and the rehab professionals. And so we are, that's where we kind of, our membership is open to that that population or that group. And but we get asked the question, about, well, what about if in fact workability 3 would be a perfect, because they deal far less with folks with mobility issues, and it's more cognitive, and a lot of folks that have autism, so as you're talking about that, I'm sitting there going, well, yeah, that would probably fit in better with workability 3 than it would be for the Rally for Riley. So
and if I may tag off a piece there, is I think a lot of times as well, the understanding of autistic bodies and minds is so much on the brain, and it is, I'm not discounting that, but there's also this true disconnect between brain and body, and the body doing things, like I've mentioned in the previous discussion, that the body will do things that the brain doesn't want it to, or the brain knows that I need to get my body from this chair to my kitchen to go get water, but it may take so much energy and so many resources from internally that, I can't get there. So mobility isn't always, a physical disability or not having the innervation to the muscles that you need to move there. It could be, and it is, more and more research is coming out and more autistic voices are coming out, that it's literally that there's misfiring of neurons, that the information is just not getting where it needs to go, or it's going to the wrong muscle, and an arm moves instead of shifting my weight to stand up. And I think I'm so passionate about that brain and body disconnect, and the neurodiversity affirming language and approaches, and presuming competence in these individuals that don't have voices to show us their cognitive skills, and
yes,
there's definitely cognitive challenges and obstacles that they overcome and work through. But in my eyes, it's not a cognitive delay. It is, a cognitive disconnect, or
because I find the folks that I know who have autism are extremely bright individuals, smart, organized, and again, but there's, like you said, that disconnect, whether it's, their speech as they're trying to carry on a conversation, or as they're carrying on a conversation, their body's doing something that is, where the person they're talking to is distracted because they're watching what's going on, and, where instead of just don't worry about what's going on, listen, pay attention to what's being said. So, and something, in a weird, similarity, I guess, a lot of folks with cord injuries have spasticity. I had, especially early on, oh my gosh, the level of spasticity I had was nuts. I still remember we were driving, it was a long distance, and we stopped to get gas. And so I opened the car door and kind of got my legs out, and I put my left hand up on the top of the door and my right hand on the roof of the car, and lifted up. And as I did, my legs went boom into extension. So I kind of relaxed my arms a little bit. I'm full weight bearing. And on this particular instance, it had to have been 4 or 5 minutes of full weight bearing before they finally began to relax. And you can tell, okay, they're getting ready to release, and then lowered back down into the car, which I really needed, for the next 2 hours of the trip. So, but I've had, been talking to people, then I get a muscle spasm, and you can tell right away their focus is now on the leg that just jumped. And I'm sitting there going, you're going to be focused on the leg that just jumped, and you're not going to hear the next couple sentences that I say.
Mhm.
And, I used to just get angry. Say, well, then the heck with you. I'm just going to keep talking and you're not going to get everything that I say. And then you're going to have to ask questions later and feel silly. I don't do that anymore. That was silly. That was silly on my part to, it was like,
Process.
so yeah, now I don't have that level of spasticity either any
Mm.
longer. So,
Yeah. And I think
but,
that's where, sorry if I cut you off.
oh, no.
Okay. I think that's where getting out into the community as well. Again, I never push my clients. If they don't value being out in the community, fine.
Yeah.
Like you value being in your backyard or
Mhm.
ordering
Mhm.
things online, that's fine, to each their own. However, there's also the benefit to the families and the clients that do want to be out in the community. The empowerment to be kind of how you were just saying, like, this is my body, this is how it's going to react, and this is what it is, so more people understand it. Because if
Yeah.
you haven't been around someone with a spinal cord injury or with autism or that uses a wheelchair,
Mhm.
like my cousin's in a wheelchair, and I think as an OT, I knew a lot of like the respect and again, I'm bouncing all over, but
No.
whoever you are speaking with and whoever is experiencing whatever you are working with, so whether it's
Mhm.
spinal cord injury, hand in therapy, autism, no one knows better on how they want to be treated besides that person. And you can't assume that every person in a wheelchair wants to be spoken to crouching down or sitting down, or like
Yeah.
everyone has their own
Yeah.
preferences. And I think there's a lot of like stigma about just saying like, hey, how do you prefer, is it comfortable for you to be looking up at me, or do you want me to sit down with you?
Yeah.
Or,
Oh, yeah.
like just lay it out there.
There's a whole big thing going on, and it's been going on now for just a few years, disability etiquette.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
even though there's, United Spinal provides here's a kind of a template,
Mhm.
that you can take and go out and do a disability etiquette training, at a business.
Okay.
And it's good to have the template, but when I talk to other chapter leaders throughout the country, stick to that template. And I go, well, you can't. It's a template.
Yeah.
It's not, it's a guide,
Mhm.
because if you read everything in there and you 100% agree with it, okay.
Yeah.
I don't. I look at this and go, okay, yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. No, I don't like that. No, I don't like that, because I feel I have a better understanding of that area. Well, then
Mhm.
I'm going to put my own, my own take on that. And yeah, so you could get 10 people in chairs and you could get 10 different answers to that question. How
Yeah.
do you want to be addressed? And if someone asked, are you comfortable with me standing or sitting or whatever, you might get 10 different responses.
Yeah. Just like any other human. Do you like chicken or do you like steak?
Yeah.
It's preferences.
Yeah.
And I think I do love, like the template. I love how so many different organizations and so many people are working on this inclusion and acceptance concept.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to educate and learn from the people living it, so it's nothing is cookie cutter in any, in any area, in all the neurodiversity and all the body diversity, everything. And everything in life too, again, as I get older, is all about the communication.
Yeah.
It may feel really hard in the moment, or like you might feel uncomfortable asking a certain question, but everyone will be happier if you just lay it out on the table, and then everyone has their needs or their preferences set so that they could be successful communicating with the person and enjoying their lives. So
yeah, when I'm in, and it doesn't happen as often now as it used to, but I'd be in line at checking out of a store, and there'd be a mom or a dad with a young child, and they would say, oh, why is that man in a wheelchair? And there would be the shh.
yes.
And to me, that's an opportunity for me to educate the parent.
Yeah.
And to allow the child to ask that question. And I'll say, oh, no, don't, that's fine. I said, that's how kids learn. So
Exactly.
no. I said, if it's okay with you, I'd like to answer that. And, and then they go, yeah,
Beautiful.
okay.
Yeah, I
And then
love
I've got 5 kids and 4 grandkids. If I can't talk to a kid and tell them about this, and shame
it.
on me, and
Yeah,
so,
yeah,
yeah, and I just try, in a way that they'll understand that.
yeah,
And so, but yeah, I mean, there were times a long time ago where I would have shaken my head and, and maybe even snapped or had a, not at that particular type of situation, but others.
yeah,
And I don't, and to me now, the only time, the only thing that still will set me off, because I'm thinking it's 2022 and this should never be happening now, is if we're in normally it would be a restaurant type situation.
yeah,
And whether it's the host or hostess will come up and they'll turn to my wife and say, where would he like to sit? Or something like that. And,
yeah,
my wife would just go, oh, you didn't just ask that, because she knows there's just steam coming out of my ears. And
yeah.
at that point, and I'm just like,
Ugh,
but I really now I try to, I said, oh, please stop right there. I said, that
mhm.
question really needs to be directed to me,
Yeah,
and just so for future reference, I mean, just direct it to that person. If there's if they have a problem answering that, whoever the person is with them, can jump in and help.
yeah,
So again, I just stop and I go, okay, here's an opportunity to teach somebody.
yeah,
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 and yeah, and that gets, and in the end, I just feel better having done it that way.
yeah.
So
And I think that's where some of the mindfulness that I work on with my clients as well is you need that self-awareness to know that, you're being triggered or that you're
yeah,
about to be like,
yeah, yeah.
and without having that awareness and then not having the tools to be like, okay, like, let me
Mhm.
just take a second and then respond instead of react and like let loose on that person,
Yeah,
it's not going to be effective for anyone.
yeah.
So yeah, I highly agree with that. And there's moments that I think for me I call myself often an autistic ally. Like I advocate for all of this, as you can tell. There's times where I'm like, and I want to advocate for that individual, but number one, that's not my place. Number two, I need to recenter and check in with them and then share. So yeah, that loops in all like my mindfulness work and just self-awareness, which is so hard in every brain and in our society today, but for me, it's what carries me through.
Yeah, and I like that. You use the autistic ally. I think I've you know I I've got just a lot of dear friends, who are with, are part of the LGBT, plus community. And
Mm,
I wasn't always fond of the term ally.
mm.
I don't know, I just didn't. So a friend of mine said, well, another term that's being tossed around is co-conspirator. So I
Oh,
thought, oh, I like that. That kind of, hits the crazy, wild and crazy side of me. That,
yeah.
so, in on my emails, in my
I thought,
signature, I have co-conspirator. But so I thought, you know what, though somebody may not know. So I added today, I think earlier today, I added ally. I think I put ally and co-conspirator. And again, it was, because, to be an ally and co-conspirator, for and with my friends who are part of the LGBT plus community. But
mm,
as you say that, I realized, you know what, that should really be not just to that one particular community, but
mm,
to all of the communities, that I support, and you know, that I want to be an ally and a co-conspirator with, so,
I love that.
so yeah, it's, so yeah, that one sentence, and all of a sudden the light bulb came on, and I went, wow, see, you can never stop learning.
Yeah,
No,
this is true.
never. The day I
That's another
stop
one of my
learning,
values.
oh,
Yeah,
let's hope that day never happens. So,
yeah, so true.
but
Very true.
wow. Um, so and I know a lot of it's just still up in the air,
Mhm.
and we still have no idea what the new normal is going to look like, and it may just continually evolve and circle
Yeah.
the heavens. Who knows? But given the situation, even just as it sits right now,
Mhm.
are there any particular plans or goals you have for 2022 that you'd like to share with everybody?
Hmm. I feel like as a business owner, I should be like, yeah, here's my plan,
Yeah,
but I do not. I'll be very real here.
yeah.
Um,
My business plan. Um, every time I go to update it, I have to update the year
yeah,
because I started it, and never got to it.
yep,
So yeah, so I'm
I
right
can
there with you.
relate. Yeah. I mean, my biggest goal overall in life is just to keep making the connections with the community that I'm so passionate about being an ally for and with.
Mhm.
Um, and whether that's through, serving more families through this service and this model that I've created,
Mhm.
or if it's through, networking events or free events where I'm just setting up and holding the space for people to show up as who they are.
Mhm.
Um, there's ideas of like future camps and retreats and mindfulness and all of it just bundled together. So I don't have a real big goal. It's more just to take every fork in the road and sit with it and then make that decision and just trust the process of where it brings me. But I know, as with how I've gotten here, I just have to stick with that moral compass and
Mhm.
being able to process it all and trust it all. So
Uh, sorry, I've got the window open and there's big
right.
noisy planes flying over. So if anybody is hearing that, that's what it is, a big noisy plane. Um, so, and normally I don't get into this side of things, but if somebody wanted to, a couple things, if they wanted to take advantage of the services you provide,
Mhm.
there would be a couple things. Number one is there certain funding sources that pay for this? That would be the first question.
Okay.
And let's tackle that question first.
Okay, good. Because I forget. So I'm
Yeah.
glad you modified for me. Thank you. Yeah, so there's a variety of ways to go about it. I do not contract with insurance companies mainly because they are very limiting,
Mhm.
and the community-based outings that I do are often not reimbursed directly to me.
Mhm.
However, I do work closely with my families before they, commit,
Mhm.
that I send over what we call a super bill, which I'm sure you're familiar with, where it has all the coding and all of that. So there are opportunities for insurance to reimburse, although I'm not like directly contracted with the insurance.
Mhm.
Through San Diego Regional Center, I am an early intervention provider from 0 to 3.
Mhm.
And then I'm also qualified for the self-determination program, which is a really great program where it's mainly for adults that are creating a program to support the life that they want, which 100% aligns with what I do.
Oh yeah.
And the funding that may, like, essentially the Cliff Note version of this is if someone is getting funding from the regional center, which is government funded, they may
Mhm.
have X amount for, say, respite care and X amount for OT and, down the line. But if that like cookie cutter model doesn't work for what you're trying to do, you can get all that funding in a lump sum. And then you decide, I actually want to do music lessons, or I want to pay a surf instructor, or whatever it is that you're passionate about. So self-determination program through the regional center is a huge one that I advocate for because it just makes sense. And a lot of families don't realize that this is an option, especially around those transition years.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So anybody listening to this that either has a family member or friend, or you know somebody who might be able to benefit from the services that Erin and Sunrise Therapies provide, then you need to take a look at that program.
Mhm.
And the second part of what I was going to ask that I wanted to keep separate, just because for the same reason I was going to forget to, would be for them to reach out to you.
Yeah.
Do you want to give your website, and then I'm sure there's a contact button on there where they can reach out from there to contact?
Yeah, that would
So-
probably be the best, the most direct. Well, yeah, the most direct, so you have it as a reference. But the website is www.sunrise, SUNRISE, therapies, THERAPIES, and then INC for Inc, because the other domain was taken, .com. And on there's a like contact button, but you can find me on social media, sunrise.therapies.
Well, look at that. Let me make
Yep.
sure that I spelled it correctly. So
That is correct.
Let me move that up a little bit on the screen. And you know what? As crazy as it seems, I don't know. I know we see this, but I don't know if somebody watching it on YouTube, if they see the chat box. So,
Yes.
so we're going to put it up there, but it's also, again, www.sunrise, SUNRISE, therapies, THERAPIES, Inc.com.
It doesn't fit on a pen.
And it doesn't fit. Well, if you had a really big pen. But
thank you for repeating that.
So, by doing that, I hope it came out somewhat correct on the closed captioning.
Yeah, great point.
So, well, Erin, this has been great. It's been a lot of fun. And yeah, I mean, yeah, we definitely work with different populations, but there were a lot of things that were just similar in approaches too. And I just love your approach, your business model. And I got a feel for that when we spoke that time we first met at the open house. Which is why I thought at some point down the road, I'm going to get this podcast thing going. And just to let you know, you are podcast number 9.
Ooh, the last one of the single digits.
The last one on single digits. Yeah.
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 I'm so grateful our paths crossed. I remember you telling me when we first met that the podcast was coming, and it got me super excited just because the conversations we had were, it's not often, again, communication that you get into a really good or deep conversation so quickly with someone when you first meet them. So
and I mean, I met some other people there, and we exchange business cards and all that, but really nothing really stuck, and so we connected, and then we communicated, and I get your you should go to the website and sign up, because if you're not getting the newsletter or that blurb that I get in my email that has so much, I mean, there's a bunch of good stuff in there. So if you're not getting that, you should get that, because at some point your path will cross with someone who's going to need this service. And it's, if you can share a resource with somebody, I mean, it's just great. It's just great to be able to do that and help somebody. So if we all work at trying to help somebody else, imagine, just think of how good this world would be, how positive this world would be. So we sure need some of that.
So true.
We need a lot of it.
But we've got it. We can
one step at a time. Yeah. And if we all do our part, providing a little bit. Absolutely. So, well, Erin, again, thank you. Thanks everybody for being on, for listening to our podcast. And, go back and listen. If you've missed something, since this is number 9, if you've missed 5, then go back and listen to 5, and all. And you know what? If you like our podcast, share it with others. So we certainly like when that happens. So Thanks to everybody who's listening, and for those on our YouTube channel who are watching and listening. And thanks again, Erin. And, we'll be back with another podcast in probably about a week. So thanks, everybody.